I don't know if it's just me, but this really colourful Y2K beachy style is everywhere again. So you might have seen it being called Coconut Girl, you might have seen it being called Y2K Tropical, but it's very clear that we're moving away from sort of minimal, more clean cut fashion and into more nostalgic, really colourful, bright and bold styles. And it's something that I am really excited about as a millennial myself. So if you've not noticed this style before, really think about kind of Hawaiian, as I said, Coconut Girl is maybe what you maybe heard it being called before. So really think about early 2000s, lots of bright colours, floral patterns, sort of beachy, surfer girl kind of style. Something, if you're a millennial like me, like you probably wore a lot of these kind of styles and outfits and colours that we're going to talk about in a little second in the summer. I know for me that this was something that I really loved when I was younger, and this was like my holiday or summer wardrobe. So it's so nice and refreshing to see, you know, moving away from, as I said, neutral colours, more minimal outfits. Don't get me wrong, minimal outfits are great and things. Obviously, they go with everything, they're very classy, but it's something that we've not really seen for quite a while in fashion, and it's something that I'm really, really excited about. So in this video, I thought we could talk about what the style actually is, what kind of styles and things to look out for, what items to look out for, how to style it, what colours to use, and obviously even a little bit of the kind of background and inspiration and how it's affecting, I suppose, pop culture and things like that, because it's actually really interesting when you dive into it. So hi, my name is Gemma. Me and my fiancé James run a fashion reselling business actually, where we sell vintage and luxury items, which is why I found this topic so interesting, because obviously it directly affects our sort of, you know, what we are going to be looking for to buy and things like that if we're selling vintage pieces. And obviously I'm talking about like Y2K, early 2000s vintage. So you're probably wondering what style I'm actually talking about. So what is this Y2K tropical or coconut girl aesthetic? So as I mentioned before, think about kind of really beachy, early 2000s beachy. If you ever watched the programme H2O, it was like a mermaid one, even that movie Aquamarine, that kind of style. Another style to think about is Penny from Big Bang Theory. I always think of her when I think of this kind of Y2K tropical style. So think like little shorts, low-rise shorts, halter neck tops, like boob tube style tops, bright colours like pink, turquoise, orange, even like yellow, lime green, and hibiscus flowers are everywhere. I don't know about you, but I know that on my kind of Pinterest feed, even my Vinted as well, when I've been looking for summery items, those hibiscus flowers are on absolutely everything right now. So they're on jeans and shorts, have been embroidered, obviously prints on tops and dresses and things like that. So yeah, basically imagine that, and that is, you know, our coconut girl Y2K tropical aesthetic. And then there's another side to it as well, which is obviously what you'd expect from Y2K stuff, is obviously the very flowy kind of baby doll dresses and tops, like sheer fabrics, very mermaid, that kind of, you know, vibes. That's also another kind of side to it as well, which I, as I said, love. I love all that kind of beachy style mixed in with the surfer girl style. It's just completely my style. It's what I loved wearing when I was younger. So it's, for me, it's so nice to see it actually come back in fashion. So you may be wondering, why is this kind of Y2K tropical style making a bit of a comeback? So a few things I think really. I mean, I've been doing a little bit of research into why I think this might be. Partly, as I mentioned earlier in the intro, we've seen a lot of neutral, minimal fashion, very clean girl aesthetic. And I actually feel like people are just craving something a little bit more interesting and exciting. Don't get me wrong, neutrals and those kind of styles are always going to be in fashion. They're always going to be classy, and, you know, that's a really, you know, great look to have, especially, it's very versatile, you know what I mean? However, I do feel people are maybe getting a little bit bored of it, and especially coming out of winter into summer, people do crave, you know, sort of more spring and summer colours and patterns and things like that, just something to brighten up their wardrobe. So I do think another part of it is actually another bit of a social trend that I've been seeing a lot of, and it's all the sort of nostalgia around about mainly 2016, which is a bit later than what obviously the style that I'm talking about. This kind of Y2K tropical style is definitely very more early 2000s, I would say, like maybe 2006-ish. That's kind of what the year that I've got in mind. However, I do think it's driven by this nostalgic kind of, you know, this feeling of wanting to feel a bit of nostalgia, looking back to what things were like when you were younger, and, you know, just that kind of fun, carefree, relaxed, you know, feeling. So I do think that is definitely driving a lot of it. Obviously the fact that Y2K fashion and styles are becoming, you know, more in fashion anyway, so it's almost like a mixture of this kind of desire for Y2K style and fashion mixed in with this sort of need for more colour and fun. And then another big thing, which I think is a massive driver for this trend, is actually sort of more to do with music and things, and that is Zara Larsson. So you may have seen all over social media and online all about Zara Larsson and her rebrand. And again, she has been, or her marketing team have been very clever with this. So her song Symphony, which came out, I think 2015, 2016, obviously blew up all over, I think it was TikTok or Instagram, wherever it was, because it was getting used with the kind of dolphin meme and things like that. So you may have heard about this. Obviously this was a good maybe 9-10 years after she actually released the song, and that a sort of image that was kind of paired with her song when it was used in lots of memes and things like that was very Lisa Frank, Y2K dolphin, rainbows, bright colours, tropical, very Y2K tropical coconut girl like sort of look to it. So what she did, or what her marketing team did, was lean into this, and now that is a massive part of her show. I'm pretty sure she does stuff with dolphins and things on stage, like blow up dolphins, and obviously her aesthetic for all her stage outfits is very Y2K, Lisa Frank, bright colours, and all the styles of her outfits are very, you know, early 2000s as well. So I do think that the blow up of Zara Larsson and, you know, her style, and obviously paired with her song and the dolphin meme and just all of that has been another massive driver for this trend. So now let's talk about the key fashion pieces that are involved in this trend. So this is obviously going to be if you are wanting to jump on this trend and dress in this style, or from my point of view, if you are maybe a reseller, a vintage reseller, you run a vintage shop, whatever it is, the kinds of pieces to look out for. So one of the key pieces, we'll kind of start with accessories, would be things like small bags. So small little handbags, but not obviously the big massive ones, smaller ones with the little straps. Anything of those that are like quite bright colours, like the colours I mentioned before, like bright blue, light blue, pink, orange, light green, all that kind of stuff, and anything that's got like diamantes on it, sparkles, little gems. You'll probably be seeing a lot of little bag charms and things, and obviously again a lot of these hibiscus flowers. A lot of vintage coach as well blends really well into this trend. So in my last video, or the video before, I talk a lot about why vintage coach is making a comeback, and this leans really, really hard into this trend. So you'll probably see, if you type in vintage Y2K coach handbag, you'll probably see all over Pinterest and things the sort of light pink, light blue coach print bags, the little bags, the little bags with the little handles that you can kind of put on your shoulder. Those are beautiful, definitely lend well into this trend, and you know, again, you can add little bag charms and things like that to them as well, just to give them a little bit of an extra something. So other key pieces to look out for, if different types of like baby doll tops. So tops that are more fitted on the top, strappy, with a sort of flowy kind of bottom, probably asymmetric as well. So one shoulder tops with either with a sleeve, without a sleeve, mesh tops, so very similar to what I'm wearing just now, which is very Y2K style. So it's mesh, and as you can see here, it actually has dolphins all over it. So deliberately wore this for this video. So anything that's kind of mesh, sheer kind of fabrics as well, definitely taps into this Y2K tropical trend. And then things like low-rise jeans, low-rise mini skirts, denim mini skirts, and low-rise denim shorts as well. And obviously if you can get these pieces with a little bit of maybe rhinestones or embroidery on them, that definitely taps into this Y2K trend as well. And then types of prints and things to look out for. I mentioned before about the hibiscus flowers. So you could get quite a plain vest or like baby tee or something like that, but there's loads of them everywhere that have those kind of Hawaiian flowers on them, or hibiscus flowers. flowers on them, whether it's a print all over or whether it's just a print in the middle or whether it's one that's been embroidered on or maybe made with rhinestones and things like that. So anything like that, dresses as well with that kind of print would definitely be perfect for this trend as well. And obviously it's perfect for coming into the summer months or if you're going away on holiday and things like that. I mentioned earlier about the little mini handbags. So other accessories that you could think about, because the accessories are a really easy way to kind of tap into this Y2K tropical trend, would be sort of tinted sunglasses. So again, this is something that I remember wearing when I was younger, was like pink tinted sunglasses or light blue, purple, and if they've got rhinestones on them as well, that is like an added like bonus. I think I remember the ones that I had, if I remember right, they were pink, and I think they had like little like a little rhinestone heart or a star or something on the actual glass in the corner. Those are like perfect for this trend and really easy to kind of wear with everything as well. You don't have to buy like or think about a whole outfit. So other things could be little floral, the little hibiscus hair clips or the little butterfly clips, but maybe instead of being the butterfly shape, they could be the little flowers, just to kind of tap into the more tropical Y2K trend instead of the typical butterfly clip Y2K trend. Other things as well would be things like chunky bangles and stuff. So again, this is something else that I remember wearing when I was that age, was sort of big chunky bangles that kind of rattled around, and obviously lots of little beaded bracelets as well. So once you've got a few kind of pieces that you think are, you know, fitting into this Y2K tropical aesthetic, how to wear them is something that some people might find a little bit tricky, because obviously it might be so different from what you would maybe normally wear if you're more into the kind of minimal look. So a good way to do it would be to pick one, you know, piece that's kind of leaning into that trend, but then wear it with something neutral. So potentially you might have a little baby doll top in a nice bright colour with like the different fabrics and things, or sort of sheer fabrics, but wear it with a pair of jeans or a neutral pair of bottoms. Same with the bottoms, you could be getting a pair of really cute embroidered jeans, like low-rise jeans, and then just wear it with a neutral top. So you don't have to go all out. Different ways that you can just tap into the trend in, you know, little ways, and you're still wearing the trend without, you know, feeling like you're dressing up like in a costume. So if you're shopping for some Y2K vintage pieces, and it can be quite tricky to tell whether it's genuine vintage, you know, 2000s, early 2000s, you know, pieces and things like that, or right now I have actually seen quite a lot of places like Shein, and even places, you know, like sort of newer brands like kind of Pull and Bear and things like that, who are obviously tapping into that trend themselves and are making their own pieces. So it can be a little bit tricky if you're looking for genuine vintage early 2000 pieces to actually spot them and to see if they're genuine. So a good thing to look at is obviously the tags. So here in the UK, obviously I don't know an awful lot about US brands, but here in the UK, really good brands to look out for would be things like Bay Trading. I don't actually even know if they're even still around, but they were a big Y2K early 2000s brand. River Island, which I know is already Y2K, but a key thing to look out here is to look for is to look at the labels. So if you see the labels, mainly that are the black and white text, they're usually newer pieces. Early 2000s River Island labels were very decorative actually, and were very luxurious looking, so they had a lot of gold thread on them. They actually had the red, I think the denim had the red sort of long skinny labels, if I remember correctly. So a lot of the labels from back in the 2000s had gold thread, red and gold. They were very decorative. Obviously I'm not saying that there might not be newer labels that might have that on them, but generally the sort of more minimal labels, the black and white labels, are for newer pieces, and then the labels that are the kind of decorative labels with the gold thread and things, or different, even sort of dark blue and metallic looking, those are the ones that are from early 2000s. Other brands to look out for would be Miss 60, Diesel, as well as Morgan. Again, I'm sure these brands still exist, but I just don't really see an awful lot of current pieces from them personally. Jane Norman would be another one to look out for. I'm trying to think of other ones. Oh, and then obviously the kind of surfer sort of brands as well. So like Billabong, Roxy, O'Neill, Rip Curl, all those kind of ones as well. Now, don't get me wrong, there are newer pieces from those brands that will definitely have a Y2K tropical look. So if you're not too fussy about it being actually vintage, those are actually really good brands to look at anyway, all the surfer ones. But again, they have a lot of vintage pieces as well that definitely lend into the sort of coconut girl look as well. So other things that are a bit of a giveaway, so for early 2000 pieces, is sort of unexpected like colour combinations. Like back then, colours were put together and they were quite bright and they maybe didn't always go, but that was kind of what was in fashion. So unexpected colour combinations on the same piece, sort of combinations of different textures and fabrics as well. Slightly more, I want to say synthetic kind of looking fabric. So as I said, like this kind of mesh style. I mean, that's not, you know, going to be cotton. So yeah, that's the only thing that's maybe a slight negative about this style, is that there was a lot of sort of shiny, more synthetic looking fabrics. So the more sheer fabrics, they kind of created that kind of more mermaidy style. So yeah, it's a bit of a balance, I suppose. As I said, you'll often see maybe on places like Vintage and Depop and things, pieces that are Y2K style or Y2K aesthetic labelled, but then when you actually go into them, they're not genuine Y2K. Now don't get me wrong, if you're fine with that, you know, perfect. I've actually been seeing a lot of pieces from Shein and things that are Y2K style, but I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's maybe just because I remember what the fashion was like then, but I can tell right away usually that it's not genuine, and it's, to me, if it looks too polished. So if it looks too put together, the piece, like the colour, as I said, the colour combinations, if they look too, like they go too well, or if the fabrics look to put together, then I'm just like, I don't know if that's genuine, because actually it's almost too polished looking. So genuine Y2K, it's almost like there's a very slight bit of clashing going on. As I said, with the fabrics that were combined, with the colours that were combined, it would be colours that you maybe wouldn't always put together. Even with the finishes, like with the embroidery and the sequins and things, it was always there's a little bit of, you know, an unexpected vibe, which is where you may be thinking, right, okay, that is actually going to be genuine Y2K if it looks a little bit unexpected. I know that's maybe quite tricky to maybe imagine or for me to explain, but I hope it makes sense. But I think this is just because, as I said, I remember what the styles were like when the things that I had, and it's, yeah, there definitely was that kind of unexpected feel to it. Whereas the more polished pieces, not always, but they are usually a modern brand that are sort of, you know, being inspired by Y2K fashion. That's probably the best way that I can explain it. So a few things to keep in mind about this Y2K tropical trend is things that might not quite work. So be wary, as I mentioned before, of kind of fast fashion knockoffs of, you know, pieces that are inspired by this trend. Chances are they won't, one, quite look right. They might be obviously cheaply made, they might fall apart, things like that. There's obviously a reason why you can still get genuine early 2000s pieces, because they've actually stood the test of time. They're obviously good quality, they're obviously made from good quality fabrics and have been well made. So that's something just to kind of keep an eye out for if you are shopping around for these kind of pieces. Another thing to look out for is if you don't want to look too costumey, is maybe, as I said, pick one or two pieces that sort of lend into this style and then wear those rather than going full head to toe Y2K tropical. And then another thing as well is about maybe not wearing too many colours all at once. So one of the sort of key things about this trend is colour, which again goes, you know, very different against the sort of minimal, clean girl aesthetic. And I have to say, one of the things that I suppose that I liked about the clean girl sort of aesthetic, or the sort of more neutral, minimal look, is that you didn't really have to think too much about what went with what. So I could pretty much go into my wardrobe and I've got a load of neutral tops, neutral bottoms, and I can pick any top, any bottom, and I know that it's going to go. Whereas with this sort of style, the Y2K tropical, you kind of have to think a little bit more about what's going to go with what. So if you don't want to look, as I say, too costumey or too over the top. So we are going to have to learn how to kind of dress with colour again, and that's one of the things that I'm quite excited about actually. So, you know, thinking about, right, wearing a colourful top with maybe a more plain bottom, or vice versa, thinking about your accessories and things like that. So yeah, I do feel like this trend is going to actually be a little bit of a challenge maybe for some of us who are now so used to just wearing neutrals and wearing colours that just always go together. Now we're actually going to have to learn how to dress using colour again. So as I mentioned before, me and my fiance run a reselling business. So this trend is definitely something that we're going to be keeping an eye on, because obviously it really lends well into our sort of vintage part of our business. So we'll definitely be looking to see what kind of Y2K tropical inspired pieces we could potentially introduce into our store. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this trend develops over the next few months as we go into the summer months, and to see how people are going to end up wearing it day to day. So comment below, let me know what you think. Is this a trend that you're excited for? Is the move away from the kind of minimal neutral look something that you're really looking forward to, and you're looking forward to dressing with colours and fun and, you know, all that fun stuff again? Let me know below. If you found this video interesting or useful, make sure and hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos, and I'll see you in our next one. Bye!